Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the Ogden City Council meeting for May 22nd, 2012. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present. And we will now have our Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chair Blair.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. The minutes of the regular meeting held March 20th, 2012. Councilmember Gochner.
Thank you. Yes, I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate and would make a motion to approve them.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Heyer to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 20th, 2012. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Appointments is next on the agenda. The advice and consent consideration of the appointment of Craig Paskins and the reappointment of Ernie Terrazas, Nikki Lavelle, Bryce Draper, Craig Bielik, Ashley Wilson to the Christmas Village Committee.
I would make a motion to approve those.
I second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Stevens to approve this appointment and to reapprove these reappointments. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And is Craig here tonight? Don't see him. Okay, thank you. Next is a request to be on the agenda. First is the Brain Injury Association of Utah, and the presentation will be by Ron Roscos. And he is the Executive Director of the Brain Injury Association of Utah.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and this is something, of course, I'm employed there, but it's also something very dear to my heart. And what I wanted to do is to give you an opportunity to know a little bit more about the situations with individuals with brain injuries. We are committed to serve those people who are with brain injuries, if they be what we call a traumatic brain injury acquired, which could be stroke, anoxic, or someone who has hypoxic brain injury. One of the crucial issues that each of them face after the injury, many of them are employed, their life is going on as normal, then all of a sudden an incident happens where their life is turned upside down. Some of the real issues that they face, that lack of services, especially in the rural and frontier areas, and there's a lot of underdeveloped and underserved programs. And of course we have a lack of training. People may not know and understand sometimes they look fine, and so I think that sometimes we don't see the physical part of it. So we just kind of go the old adage, you look fine, you act fine, so therefore you are fine. But one of the things we need is special training for those individuals. And we need a proper job skills and training for future employment. And I just kind of give you an idea how these issues affect our community. Every 23 seconds a brain injury takes place somewhere in the United States. If we back that up to 20 seconds and I spoke for an hour, there'd be 180 individuals that just suffered a brain injury. And if we used everybody in this room as being the United States, that someone here is going to go home with a brain injury, or they're going to arrive at home and find somebody either being taken out by an ambulance or been in a car accident. It can happen to any of it. It's not a respecter of persons. Annually, there's over 2,673 people that sustain a brain injury, and it's a TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury. Could be a slip and fall, a concussion, car accident, and that's just reported. That aren't the ones that go without being reported. 471 people died, and this report is of 2009. But one of the big issues is $73 million in hospital and emergency department charges for traumatic brain injuries. And there is an estimate of 56,000 individuals that sustain a TBI each year, and that is documented by the Center for Disease Control. Some of the Utah statistics: every day 37 people visit the emergency room, and another 7 are hospitalized or die from a brain injury. And you can see some of the statistic falls is the most, and it seems to be those that are under the age of 5 and those that are over the age of 75. And if we look at the incidence of selected health, this is compared, and we don't want to say that ours is worse than the others, because no matter what organization you represent, it is a health issue. But there are 1.7 million brain injuries. This is just traumatic brain injuries that take place in the United States. And with breast cancer, there's 960,000 new ones. So you can see the difference in the numbers that happen, but yet a lot of people don't know and understand brain injuries. These are some of the costs. Average lifetime cost for a severe brain injury is $4 million. And this is an individual person who has had probably a severe brain injury, and it can take up to 10 years for that person to go back into the community and be able to take care of the needs. Approximately $56.3 billion in annual costs for TBI-related injuries. We're also helping these individuals get back to work, and there's also some costs that maybe a spouse had to quit their job to take care of this individual. So there's a lot of other costs. That's indirect, is calculated over $33 billion. This is something that was in the 2005 resource magazine, and this is public funding. This is dollars allocated per person per year, and if we can see that there's over 900,000 with HIV/AIDS, and if you break that down dollar for dollar from the federal government is $18,111 per person. And as you go down through and you see breast cancer, there's 3 million people, and you allocate those dollars, $295 per person. Then you look at the disappropriate of funding to brain injuries. There's 5.3 million individuals with TBI. And if you break that down with the money that's allotted per person is $2.55. As you can see, there isn't a lot of funding that goes to people with brain injuries, and there's such a need. I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't know someone who has been affected by brain injury. And we are making a difference. We provide support and services to the community. And our mission, just a few minutes, just to give you kind of an idea what we do. Our mission is to provide help, hope, and healing through education, facilitation, and advocacy. Our education, we have a Family and Professionals Conference that takes place in October. We have a website. We also have a case manager site that we're putting together to help individuals to be able to communicate together with case managers to help individuals with brain injuries and their families. We actually do personal needs assessments. We have support groups in the community. McCady Hospital has one here in Ogden, and we do a lot of community collaboration. And we're a champion of awareness and prevention, and do a lot of public relations and grassroots lobbying. Our resource facilitation, that we actually have resource counselors that provide an umbrella of support to those individuals who are needing. We have a lot of individuals who call our office that don't know where to go or where to turn, and we help those individuals to find resources. Many of them, they come out of the hospitals and rehab centers, and they don't know where to go after that. And a lot of times they're not given the proper information that can help them to find those resources. So we help guide them through the maze, and we've had a lot of individuals that we've been able to help. We have a Being Head Smart program where we go into the elementary schools, the kindergarten through 6th grade. We help those individuals to become aware of brain injuries and how they can protect themselves. We do those presentations and help give education and the awareness not only to the children but to the teachers and to the families. We believe that we can help those individuals to better understand wearing a helmet and how to be safe. It starts at a young age. If they go through elementary school and wearing helmets when they get to junior high and high school, it's not that big of a deal. But But we know that there's a lot of peer pressure when you get older, and so that has been what we've dedicated our program with. We also have Latino outreach. We are part of the Mexican consulate in Salt Lake, where we actually help individuals one-on-one. The Hispanic population is the highest minority group that has brain injuries. Many of them are migrant workers without insurance and don't have opportunities to get the services they need, so we do help with that. We do have a Veterans Outreach Program. We actually collaborate with the Veterans Administration. We are working on a resource directory that will actually help train individuals in universities and colleges, help the instructors and teachers and professors to help better understand those who have brain injuries. And many of those individuals that come back, and it's called the signature wound. The RAND Corporation did a study on that, and they found since the beginning of Iraq and Afghanistan war and through January 31st of 2008, there were 320,000 men and women who suffered a traumatic brain injury. In the days during Vietnam, a lot of the explosions went sideways. It was shrapnel, but it's like, I had one soldier say, it's like being put in a microwave. It goes right through you. And they have great protective as far as armor, as for their chest and stuff, but they still haven't come up with anything that really protects them with their brain injuries. So we're looking 320,000 through January of 2008. Many of these individuals will be coming back into our communities, and we need to be prepared and ready to help them. Just to give you an idea of some of the events we have, we held our first art show. It's called Narrow Expressions. We had individuals who had suffered brain injuries, their family members and professionals that serve in the brain injury community with an art show. And this was our second, and it's been very successful. We also put on a family and professional conference in October, and this past Saturday, we had our 5K, 18th annual 5K run, walk, and roll. And the roll part is those who are in wheelchairs that can also participate. Many of those are living in sheltered homes, and that's a big entertainment to them. And then we're also put a deal together with the Ogden Raptors. We're going to have Brain Injury Awareness Night. It's going to be August the 9th. I do have some tickets. There's a baseball, and it says Brain Injury Association of Utah, and they actually even let us put a helmet on the mascot. So that's some of the things that we're planning, and this is our first time. And Mr. Bagley, when we talked to him, he said if this was a success, that they would have Brain Injury Awareness Night in every city that's in the league, and that's 6 different cities. One would be Orem and Ogden here, but it'd also be Pocatello and Grand Junction up in Montana. So this could be a real big event, and we hope that we can have many of you there and the public. You can also find updates on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And we've just updated our website, and there's a lot of great information on there. And just kind of want to leave with this. This kind of a saying came from an individual who came to our office many years ago. And we were sitting there talking to him, and he says, "You're the first person that I've gone to that really understands." He says, "At last, someone understands." And so it was something that we felt that was very dear to our heart. We have last year we had over 260,000 hits to our website. We had over 6,200 incoming calls, and these are many individuals who didn't know about us and had been to one of our events or actually found our website. But when we look at the number that are being injured, number that are affected by brain injury, we just hope that we will know that we can help those individuals, but we also hope that you will be able to take a step as far as your own families and those around you. You are individuals that have a leading position here, and I hope that we may all find brain injury is something that happens in a lot of households, because I know that if you leave here tonight, you're in a hurry. You want to get home, maybe you want to watch the game or whatever it is, get the kids out for a walk before they go to bed. You know that there could be somebody or yourself that could be in an accident tonight, and you could become a statistic, and we don't want that to happen. And I appreciate your time, and if there's any questions, I'd be willing to answer.
Questions? Ron, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here.
For your time.
Next on the agenda is a recognition. May is the National Stroke Month, and we have a brief proclamation that would be my pleasure to read. And I just have to organize myself here for a minute. This is a joint proclamation for Ogden City Council and the Mayor proclaiming May 2012 as Stroke Awareness Month in Ogden City. Whereas stroke is a leading cause of serious long-term disability and the fourth leading cause of death in the United States, killing over 134,000 people nationwide each year. In Utah, about 3,500 people die each year from heart disease and stroke. And whereas in 2009, heart disease and stroke accounted for 25% of all deaths, and in 2008, hospitalization costs for heart disease and stroke alone were $573 million, with an average cost of $33,000 per hospitalization. And whereas stroke prevalence is projected to increase by approximately 25% between 2010 and 2030, and the direct medical costs for treating stroke are expected to increase by 238%, from $28.3 billion in 2010 to $95.6 billion by 2030. And whereas warning signs of stroke include sudden numbness or weakness of the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side of the body, sudden confusion, trouble speaking or understanding, sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes, sudden trouble walking, dizziness, loss of balance or coordination, and sudden severe headache with no known cause. And whereas Americans are more aware of the risk factors and warning signs for stroke than in the past, however, according to a recent survey, 1/3 of adults cannot identify any symptoms of stroke. And whereas the signature action for American Stroke Month 2012 is to reach out to a young audience through all music genres and social media activities to educate them about stroke, warning signs and risk factors, and to engage them in sharing the messages with their parents and grandparents. And whereas new and effective treatments have been developed to treat and minimize the severity and damaging effects of strokes, but much more research is needed. And whereas eating a healthy diet, regular physical activity, maintaining a healthy weight, managing stress, and complying with medication prescriptions can all help to maintain a healthy blood pressure and reduce the risk of stroke. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim May 2012 as Stroke Awareness Month in Ogden City. We encourage residents to familiarize themselves with the risk factors associated with stroke, recognizing the warning signs and symptoms, and on first signs of stroke, dial 911 immediately so that we might begin to reduce the devastating effects of stroke on our population.
With that, I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the proposed joint proclamation declaring May 2012 as Stroke Awareness Month in Ogden City.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Blair and a second from Councilmember Wicks to adopt this proclamation. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to invite Scott Brown to come up. Scott is the Advocacy Director for the American Heart Association, and he's got a few guests with him tonight that he'll introduce.
I'm Scott Brown with the American Heart and American Stroke Association. I just wanted to say thank you to the members of the council and to the mayor and to the citizens of Ogden for taking time to recognize the symptoms and the signs of stroke. As you heard in the proclamation, it's the fourth leading cause of death in the nation. However, sadly in Utah, it is the third leading cause of death. It is also the first leading cause of morbidity or disablement. Fortunately, however, I would say that Northern Utah and Ogden City are very fortunate. You have two hospitals that are primary stroke centers, and they're both represented here tonight by Chrissy Thompson and Christy Chambers, and I'll give them just a minute to give you a little bit of information about what they see every day at their hospitals. But thank you again.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chrissy Thompson from McCady Hospital. Every 40 seconds, someone in America has a stroke. It's the fourth leading cause of death in the United States, as we've already discussed. It is the leading cause of long-term disability. Nearly 800,000 Americans will suffer a stroke this year, and many of them will be left with some sort of disability. In fact, 15 to 30% of all stroke survivors are permanently disabled. However, there is a treatment available to decrease the effects of stroke, but it is important to rapidly recognize the warning signs and seek medical treatment immediately. In addition, up to 80% of all strokes can be prevented through stroke awareness and education regarding healthy lifestyles and behaviors. McCady Hospital would very much like to thank Ogden City for making this proclamation about stroke awareness and bringing this important information to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christy Chambers, and I'm the stroke coordinator at Ogden Regional Medical Center. And as Scott said, this community is very fortunate that we have two hospitals that are stroke certified. And that's important to know because we work very hard as coordinators to look at metrics and look at statistics and educate our staff and educate our EMS agencies that we work with to provide the best care possible for our stroke patients so that we can eliminate the disability that they potentially seek. But there's a major problem. No matter how good we are, no matter how good our EMS system is, if the community does not call 911, there is not much we can do except get them into rehab if they miss that window of opportunity for treatment. And as a nurse and seeing that, if we can get a patient within that window of time and be able to give them the medication, the clotbuster medication, or provide interventional radiology, there's lots of research being done and things that have been proven. Once you see a patient that has walked in or not walked in, but with a disability that you know they're going to spend a good portion of their life or the rest of their life recovering from, and they get that medication, and they walk out of that hospital with little to no disability, it is amazing. And it is unfortunate that our community is not aware of that. I feel strongly, and most of the medical community feels as strongly, that stroke should be treated just as urgently as a trauma or someone experience a heart attack, because the difference that we can make if we only can get those patients in time. So thank you for creating this awareness. I hope it helps our community understand the importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Christy, stay here for a moment. I'm going to ask Scott and Christy just to come up, and we'll present you with this proclamation and let you shake a few hands. Come right up here, guys. It's my pleasure to get this.
I'm not sure how we stayed
Why don't
here.
you two stand here? We'll turn you around when Scott comes back.
Okay. There. Sorry. I'm Bossy.
Bossy is a cow.
What?
Bossy is a cow.
I know. Okay. Make sure to get everybody. Okay, 1, 2. Oh, Caitlin. Sorry.
You moved.
Okay, 1.
Appreciate it.
Think morbid start here.
Appreciate them being here, and as they mentioned, time is of the essence, and one of their sayings is, time is brain, survivals.
You don't have to be a brain surgeon to diagnose a stroke.
Right.
One of my questions would be, what is the time frame? Is it an hour? What is it exactly, or is there one?
There is, and it depends. It depends on the patient, and it depends on the type of treatment. There's a 3 to 4.5 window for IV TPA, which is the medication that we give.
3 and 4.5
Hours.
3 to
minutes?
4.5 hours
Hours,
from
okay.
the last time that they were known to be well.
Okay.
So all of these patients that are not feeling well and go to bed to see if they will feel better in the morning, those are the ones, we get a fair amount of wake-up strokes, we call them, that we cannot do anything about. There's other treatments that can be done that extends that window from 12 to even 24 hours, depending on where the clot is in the brain. But really that, just that education of that 3 to 4.5 hour window is just so important.
32,000 brain cells die every second that treatment is not being given. So truly, the sooner that the stroke symptoms are recognized, 911 is called and they're to the hospital and the treatment's given, the better.
How did the two hospitals work together then, or in their operations of a stroke victim? Do you work together, or?
We have to. We share our EMS system, and so that relationship has to be strong. We both look at the same types of metrics because we're both certified under the same type of organization, which is the Joint Commission and the Get With the Guidelines American Heart Association. McKay offers an interventional radiology that we do not at Ogden Regional. And so, again, it's what's best for the patient. And so if we're outside of the 3.5 to 4.5 hour window, but they can still benefit from interventional radiology where they shoot the medication right into where the clot is into the brain, then they can still benefit from that treatment. So appreciate the questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Have
much.
a great night. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our utilities ordinances and master plan and old business, and Mr. Symes.
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to briefly go over what happened the last couple of meetings and just talk briefly about where we are in the process. At the May 1st meeting, we did have presentations for all of the different elements. That includes the utility rate study itself, the ordinance, the proposed joint resolution, culinary water master plan, stormwater master plan, and the capital improvement plan. At that May 1st meeting, the public hearing was set for May 15th. And then last week at the May 15th meeting, we did have a presentation for all of those items again. The public hearing was opened for all of these items, and we did receive some comment. The public hearing was closed at the meeting of the 15th. Each of these items was continued as well at the 15th to tonight's meeting. So tonight, because we've had presentations on all of those things, we're not planning on having any formal presentations. We do understand that the mayor would like to briefly address the council prior to your deliberation. Just one thing I would want to mention, the language change that had to do with renters being covered under the military discount, that was substituted at the last meeting, so the version you have in your packet does include that change, so you don't need to make a motion for a substitute ordinance tonight if you make a motion on the ordinance. And with that, I'll turn the time over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And as a reminder, too, comments regarding this, if you do want to make comments, you can make those during our public comments section. And at this time, I'll turn some time over to Mayor Caldwell for his address, and then I'll follow up.
I just want to applaud the council on what I saw as a very thoughtful, thorough, and committed process. This is a very sticky, delicate problem. We spent a number of months studying it. You guys have been beat up with a number of different meetings, some budget hearings, and everything kind of came in the perfect storm. And I think you guys have had a very open process with this, and I applaud your commitments and efforts to that. I'd also like to thank our staff that has spent so much time and energy looking through this and trying to identify a way forward that would both limit the liability for catastrophic failure to our citizens, and I think they found ways to be as fiscally conservative as possible. So thank you guys for that effort and commitment as well. And we'll leave it open to discussion, and we appreciate your support. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Also, I'd like to say that we truly have listened to the input that we've received, and we have received significant input for and against rate increases. I think that the education and other things that have come out of this study have been very beneficial for the public and for the council members. I think it was beneficial to understand the infrastructure and other needs of our community. New rates are needed to eliminate inequity in our current water rate structure. As we've looked at the rates, we're trying to adjust them appropriately so that we can provide funds for replacement, repair, implementation of the 2011 Water Master Plan that was developed. Our rate structure is designed to allow for the outdoor watering where secondary water has not been available, and it's based on City Council policy direction. It's a little bit simpler with fewer tiers. Most water revenue collected from usage tiers with less revenue collected through base rate. And the water utility should adhere to sound financial principles, and I think we've really worked hard to adjust to that. Base rate using equivalent residential connection provides a reasonable method. We've really heard other things that may have worked, but this was one that we felt was a reasonable method of spreading the costs. And then we looked at our sewer rates. And residential sewer rates will now include a portion of the bill based on water consumption after more than 6,000 gallons of water has been used. And rates for residential usage will be determined based on average use in the winter months. But I do want to thank all of the members of the administration and the city who have helped us, worked with us to bring this. We've also appreciate the feedback again that we've received from citizens in the community. And one last thing is the legislative intents, and we are proposing legislative intents to review fiscal charges and consideration of the Weber Basin Culinary Water Property Tax Assessment. And I want to thank all the council members for their hard work and dedication and time, and the council staff. With that, I'll turn time over to other council members for comments, further discussion.
I'll go ahead and just mention a few things that I was thinking about during this process. I think it's important to remember that this all came about because of the policy decisions that we set forward at the very beginning of this process. We knew that there was some inequity issues with the previous water rate structure, and we wanted to address those. We wanted to try to make it a more fair water structure for each one of our citizens. And as mentioned earlier, we all knew that our infrastructure was very old, and that not addressing it could be, as the mayor mentioned, catastrophic. And I think that was also very important that we look to address our aging infrastructure. And I think what else is important is that we also find a funding resource or a funding mechanism to address some of those projects from our master plan, and I think we've done that. We've tried to involve the public as much as we can. We've had numerous public hearings. We've had steering committees. We've had opportunities for us to gather information so that we can take the needs and the concerns of our citizens and implement them into the structure. I think another thing to focus on was, I don't think we'll ever agree. I don't think any two people will ever truly agree on what the rates need to be. And I think as a council, and we did try to focus on consensus, tried to figure out what those policy issues were, and tried to stick true to those policy issues and try to build consensus on those. And those, like the mayor had mentioned, this is not an easy decision. This is not an easy one to swallow. I do believe that this is a responsible decision, and I feel very comfortable with that. And I'm not saying I look forward to do this again, but I do value this opportunity to go through the utility rates and to go through this process. And I thought it was a very open and a very fair process.
Further comments at this time?
I just have a quick comment. I just want to add to that I'm in my 5th year, and I think this is one of the most difficult issues that we've addressed during that time. And we have spent a lot of hours learning, discussing, trying to gain consensus. And it's been a really delicate balancing act, and I agree with what Councilmember Blair Blair just said. But I also want to point out that we spent hours and hours on this, and we feel good about it, but we are going to review it annually, so there's always room for improvement.
You know, I want to thank the staff and the city administration and everybody that's been involved, because I think this has been a huge undertaking for every citizen in Ogden, and I've had multiple phone calls. I mean, I'd say 20 or 30 phone calls, emails. I can't even tell you the number of emails. But I think the issue that we've had that's been so difficult is the understanding, and is how we understand this difficult situation, because it has been difficult, because it affects our water bills and our utility rates the same as it does you. I think it'd be much easier to vote against this because of the feedback we get from the citizens, but I think it'd still be just passing the buck. And as someone said, we've kicked the can down the road long enough, and it's time that somebody stand up. And the council in 2007 did stand up and say this infrastructure has to be fixed. And I think, too, that we need to be sure that we're establishing a sound physical policy that'll ensure the physical sustainability of our water in the future. And I think that's what's going to always limit the growth not only of Ogden but of the Wasatch Front, is how do we use our water and how do we use it wisely. What I've been hearing a lot from constituents is they say, well, you know, you have $13 million sitting in the sewer fund, why don't we just use that? And I think the response to that is those are already earmarked projects that are for the sewer master plan, which needs to be done because we have a 100-year-old system and we see the failures coming, and I don't want to see Ogden to be without water. And I think this has been very well thought out. It's not an issue that we created, and it's kind of come to be a perfect storm where all this has kind of come together, and it makes the water bill rise because we just need to be sure that we pay for the water we use and that everybody is accountable for what they use, and that means conservation. And I think that that's a real issue that we're going to be dealing with in the future with weather change and whatever. But I think at the very end, it comes down to that our water, just our water, now we're not talking the rest of the issues, but just the water, it's very reasonable for the communities that are around us. When I moved here in 1978, my water bill in Virginia, just my water bill alone, was $70 a month. I can't imagine what they're paying now. And that did not include refuge or sewer or anything else. It was just getting water into your home. And I think there's a portion of our water bill that we can't control, and one of that has to be the Weber Sewer District, and that's going up to $13.94 a month. That needs to be produced, and we just need to be worrying about how do we produce safe drinking water, and that our systems are sound and that they're in alignment for the future. And you know, I've worked with many constituents to understand the complexity of the issues, and believe me, it's very complex. And my commitment is the citizens of Ogden to have clean drinking water and safe drinking water.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to the comments of our fellow council members, and what they brought out is very interesting and very concerning, that we all have a concern of what's happening to our water. But most important of all, we need to thank our council staff and the steering committee for hearing some of the questions that we have and some of the questions that you have. I think the administration has assisted us very well in giving us the necessary legal aspects and also the importance of how to govern our water resources that we have. And our consultants has added us the material that we've asked for them, and I think that's important to us to listen to all of the information. And surely our council members, and I am one of them, have concerns and questions, and we propose those, and we've been in many long hours and meetings to address the situation that is before us. But the most important aspect is that we open it up to the citizens of Ogden. And you had an opportunity to voice your concerns and your ideas, and many of them were helpful. and the knowledge and the information they provided was very helpful. And the most important aspect is that you have a concerning aspect of how to manage the water aspects of our community. And not only a concern, but an interest, because, you know, if you turn on your tap, hopefully you'll get a glass of water from your tap, and that's the idea that we have. But the ideas and the direction you've given us were very helpful. But if we go back the year 2007 and 2008, there was 3 major aspects that we needed to address at that particular time. Number one, we knew that the water system was very aged and that improvements needed to be done because there had not been a renovacation of our system for some time. And we were going through and putting Band-Aids on, and hopefully they would hold up and do well. But we wanted to address the smell of the water, the taste, and the pressure. And so those were some of the objectives that we had. Some of the things that we knew was coming was the filter plant up the canyon. Some of the items that we knew was coming into the future was that canyon line that was coming down Ogden Canyon to be addressed there because of the age of that line. And some of the CIP projects needed to be addressed at that particular time. The well fields up by Pineview needed to be looked at and planned a plan by which we could protect the wells that are in that area because they do provide us the quality water that we have. But most important of all is to work out a system by which we can actually establish wells on this side of the mountain. And that will develop an independence of our water system, and I think that's very important. And as mentioned before, we went through and did a bonding that year. But some of that bonding, we were able to accomplish some of our improvements in the water system, but also develop a storage system which will help us. As I looked at the filter plant, and as I looked and listened to much of the information given to me, I tried to analyze it. How is the best that I could perspective given to you and to me? And one of them is that if I have an old car and the wheels on that car, the rubber is, yes, it'll probably go a couple of years, but I'm going to have to replace those tires on that car. Or I may have a back light out that I may have to replace. Or the battery in my car may not be functioning as well. I may have to jump it to get it going several times throughout the year on occasions. Or what about the rust spots on this automobile? Or if the oil light keeps going on, do I keep adding oil to that car in hopes that it'll get me down the road? Or if I'm taking a trip across country to visit a relative, is that old car going to provide the service that I need? And as I analyzed those, there are several options I could have done. I could have repaired the car on several occasions to maybe extend the life, but I don't know how long those repairs would last. Or I would do nothing and hopefully the car would last the trip that I was going on. Or the other option is that I would go ahead and either buy a new or used car that would have all those functions taken care of. The water system that we're looking at, the filter plant needs to be improved. The line down the canyon needs to be replaced. The CIP projects need to be addressed, and our well systems need to be taken care of and looked at. So this hasn't been an easy issue before the council. I'm concerned about the rates. I'm concerned about the decision that's here, and it's not a very easy decision. But I'm also concerned about the filter plant and that canyon line coming down the canyon. And do I bond for those? Well, those are things that need to be taken care of so that we, as mentioned by Council Member Van Heuser, need to provide quality of water to our citizens and a safe aspect of providing that service. We anticipate and expect reports from the administration on how our system is working so that we can judge what is actually happening to our water and what we can do. We need to look at a sewer master plan that we can use in our city and find out exactly what improvements need to be there. In conclusion, the concerns we have are the same concerns that you have. I do not like to raise rates. I do not like to see things keep going up and up. But there's a time that we need to go ahead and improve our system so that we can deliver a product to our citizens of quality that we have in our system here, and that we have a system that's going to last. So the decision that I make tonight is a decision not only for the present, but I make a decision for the future. The future of those who are going to live in this city so that they can receive the same type of service that you and I have received at this particular time. Is it perfect? No, it's not. And it never will be perfect, but we can keep on improving on it and doing those things that needs to be taken care of. Can we plan? Yes, we can plan. We can put our priorities on some of the CIP projects to improve some of those things, or plan to develop the wells on this side, or plan to protect our wells up by Pineview. And if we do that, we can amortize that over a 10, 15-year period. But with this aspect of planning and education aspect of conserving our water, we can be productive in this aspect of developing a quality system to you and the citizens of Ogden. I think the most important aspect and commodity we have in this country, part of the country, is the water. It's very valuable to us, and we need to use it in the most wise way. Funding, as Councilman Bart Blair mentioned, is necessary, and we need to find out the best method of using those funds and be fiscal responsible. So that's how I feel on this aspect of here, on this future.
Further comments? Can we?
I have something. I realize there are some very real, very expensive needs within our utility system. There were also some inequities within our previous rate structure. By accepting the assumed bonding that goes along with the proposed rates, we're devoting funds that could be used for infrastructure into interest and bonding expenses. We're also saddling our residents with that debt and binding them to make those payments for many years. I believe there are some errors in the assumptions used in the calculations used by the consultants. I have concerns with the rate structure that we didn't address the 17% fiscal charge. I realize that's a difficult thing to do, but I just really don't feel that that's right. And I think that we've passed one inequity in the rate structure from one user group onto another is what we're going to do. I don't like that the rates, they don't encourage conservation for many user groups. We're placing an unfair burden on residential users for sewer rates and water rates too, but more so for sewer rates. And I have not received adequate answers to questions or concerns about the proposed rate structure from the consultants and maybe some of the errors in some of the calculations. And I suppose it's easy to accept the proposed rates, and when those unintended consequences occur, it's easy to place blame on the consultants who came up with the rate structure. But I can and won't do that. We owe it to our citizens to get it right, and I don't think we're getting it right with what's proposed.
Thank you. Okay. Can we entertain a motion then for the Culinary Water Master Plan, proposed resolution 2012-10?
So moved.
I second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed resolution 2012-10. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Stormwater Master Plan, proposed resolution 2012-11.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Vice Chair Blair to adopt proposed resolution 2012-11. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. Thank you. That passes. Next on the agenda is the fiscal year 2013 through 2017 Capital Improvement Plan, proposed ordinance 2012-22.
So moved.
I second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Van Hoosier and a second from Councilmember Stevens. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. That passes. Next is the utility rate ordinance, proposed ordinance 2012-23.
So move.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Stevens and a second from Councilmember Van Hoosier to adopt proposed ordinance 2012-23. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
No.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. Next is, and that passes. Next on the agenda is the utility rate joint resolution 2012-3.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Blair. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
No.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. That passes. Thank you. And just to echo all the things that the council members have said, this was not an easy process, and we do thank you for your time. Next on the agenda is, or further discussion? Oh, we need to excuse you, sorry. We would like to excuse Councilmember Heyer so that he can attend the graduation of his boys, so
Appreciate that. Thank you.
thank you.
Yep.
Then next on the agenda is the public hearing for the Capital Improvement Plan, amendments and budget openings. Mr. Arrington.
Chair Garner members, Chair Garner members, that was going back a ways. It's a pleasure to be before you tonight to present a budget opening to expand the airport terminal at the airport. Reminder that on April 17th, in funding a study plan account, you approved the project brief and adding this project to the CIP plan for the current year. So before you tonight is the funding for that project. Let me just review how we get to the money, the $650,000 proposed to be appropriated for that. The total budget opening is $1,223,650. The primary source of funding comes from BDO enterprise funds, which is the balance of the fiscal year 2012 funds to be appropriated from BDO for capital projects. That has not been appropriated earlier this year, so we're now proposing that $573,650 be transferred to the airport fund. In addition to that, to get to the $650,000, it's proposed that $76,350 be reappropriated from the 31st Street entryway account, which doesn't anticipate to be used, to interfund transfers out of the CIP fund over to the airport also. The total of those two equals $650,000 to be transferred as revenue to the airport fund. It will then be appropriated to the CIP city portion, since the federal government does not participate in this expansion, of $650,000 to be used for the expansion of the airport terminal. That is the financial portion, which is the budget opening. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to address them at this time. And I believe before the public hearing that Mr. Royal's here from the airport, if you have any questions you'd like to ask of him.
Good evening, Council. Amy, can I have this? Thank you. It's been the goal of the city to have a commercial service operate out of the Ogden Airport. The economic benefits of commercial service to Ogden, the airport, and the community and the county are huge. It helps also Ogden achieve the vision that we all have of having Ogden being a destination. What we are in need of is the security and a hold space, because what we have currently in our terminal is insufficient. This is our current terminal building, which at the time when the expansion of that occurred was pre-9/11, and they were also pursuing jets that only had 50 passengers. The space that was allocated here was sufficient at that time. Post 9/11, with TSA and the other requirements that we have, we can no longer accommodate any type of jet service out there right now for being able to screen, to put onto planes, and then leave. What we're proposing is this expansion of the terminal building here, which would be adjacent to our building. This is the current terminal here. This is the space that's open, that's available for it. The expansion will provide TSA with an area to do passenger screening, also a hold space to accommodate large aircraft with passengers from 166 to 220 plus. We currently receive these aircraft from Salt Lake. We're currently a weather divert. We have no way of deplaning a passenger right now to come on. They have to stay on the plane on weather diverts. But more importantly, we don't have the ability to load airplanes without this space. We can't accommodate airlines or service without it. The planned space will be approximately 4,800 square feet, 1,500 of which TSA will occupy with the screening that you've all been familiar with as you've traveled through Salt Lake or any other airport. As I mentioned, the location is unused space right now. It's just a grass area. And the exterior design will mimic the current terminal, i.e. the stucco, windows, the parapet, and the eaves will all match and blend in. The structure will enable the tourism, hotel, restaurants, rental cars, and the sales tax that they generate. And more importantly, it'll also help us in recruiting the other businesses who would like to relocate to Ogden. Any questions that I can answer?
Can you review the potential revenue that we would receive as a city of an airport if we make this expansion?
Yes. Airports make revenue in a couple of different ways. The number one way they make it is in parking. Salt Lake generates $48 million a year just in parking. Other things like terminal counter space, spaces that's available for restaurants. They even make a gross on top of what that percentage of the gross of what those restaurants and rental cars make. There are other fees that you could generate, such as advertising. The walls now become advertisable space because of the sheer number of people that flow through there that see things. Hotels will advertise there. Any other businesses that want to attract the people who will be flowing through that area will now advertise. So we now have a new revenue source for the airport. This one revenue source alone, just in parking for the Ogden Airport, will generate more money than we could by building another 200 hangars.
Royal, I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about the impact this may or may not have on other operations at the airport.
It won't have any difference. It's, to best put it, any operation at the airport that comes in under IFR, which is Instrument Flight Rules, which is controlled by Salt Lake, instrument conditions, or even non-instrument conditions, that is Salt Lake providing separation between airplanes. That's currently happening now. That happens every day. People go out and train to do that. When they do that, ATC, Traffic Control Center, separates airplanes automatically. This is just one other airplane that's already in the system to be separated. I have letters from the FAA. Here's one I'll show you that basically state that. If you can read that.
Would you like me to make copies for them?
They already have them, I believe.
Got it from before. Does this also mean that, let's say, Salt Lake's fogged in, and they decide they're going to land a plane in Ogden?
It gives us the opportunity, yeah, we do that
To
currently.
deplane, could they deplane with this new
Exactly.
system?
Right.
And put on a bus or whatever has to happen?
They don't
Okay.
have to do buses anymore. They get to stay here in Ogden.
They can-
Currently, just so you know, they had to be put on a bus that was still considered a TSA sterile environment. So they had to be allocated to that bus, and then that bus had to be driven down to Salt Lake, back down to a sterile environment before they could become,
Could be deplaned or
Right.
whatever, officially, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's post 9/11. It's one of those things.
Just to piggyback Councilmember Gochner's question, will this expansion affect anything that's going on at the airport right now? Will we still function through the expansion?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many,
Understanding is, from our discussion, is that the security will be tighter at the airport because of this, initiating this.
Yes, we are a secure airport right now. We have a punch code that'll change over to proximity cards where they swipe. The advantage for us is that it seems like everybody knows our security code to get in. This way we can tell exactly who's coming in. The background check will be put on every person that gets issued a security card. It's actually much better for us for security and for the people who own assets out there.
And Royal, in the past, we've had questions regarding Hill Air Force Base. And I know that you've addressed that with us, but for the public,
Here's a letter from Hill Air Force Base stating there's no problem with our operations.
how many flights will we be coming in and going out on a day-by-day basis?
Well, the Sabre data shows that we could do 22 round trips a week out of there.
So just following up on the Hill Air Force Base letter, and I know you have that, and I'm not a pilot, but I'm just going to kind of continue down that vein. I mean, I think this is an exciting opportunity for Ogden, and when the weather's good, I see that all working out. What about when the ceiling's low and Hill Air Force Base needs to land their jets, and we possibly have an incoming jet?
Salt Lake's jets are controlled in weather conditions. They're controlled by Salt Lake also, so that's already accounted for. And in fact, they come in at a different altitude. They fly over us at a different altitude than the approaching airplanes into Ogden. We're a Category 1 landing system at Ogden, so we have the ability to come down at certain levels, and they're flying above that. This happens every day in every
You mean, so the
airport.
military's above?
Military's already above us right now.
And what if that ceiling is low
It
and
doesn't
they
matter.
have
They're
to come
flying
down?
into clouds at that point in time. They have to maintain their altitudes.
Okay, so following up on that, I know Hill Air Force Base is kind of going through a new round of, scrutiny with the base closings. So, I mean, I'm all for Ogden, but this doesn't have any bearing on
Zero.
that kind of, okay.
And this letter basically says that. It doesn't affect their patterns at all. Our patterns won't impede anything that they're already doing, so it would not be an issue for them saying, well, look, Ogden's got this busy airport next to this military airport, and we can't land our military aircraft. That's just not the case.
and Mr. Eccles, can you briefly just talk about your efforts to work with the surrounding communities also?
I contacted the City of Roy, met with the mayor, met with the city administrator there. They're excited about it because they understand the economic impacts it is for their community.
Have you heard any concerns from citizens who live around the airport? Maybe concerns about additional noise or anything like that?
No, in fact, if the noise, Hill Air Force generates much more noise than what these people would ever generate. Remember, we're only talking a limited number of flights, which we're already receiving those type of flights in jet traffic currently.
And going back to, I know there are some activities going on at the airport that maybe aren't directly related to the airport. With the new security system, I would assume this would maybe cut down on some
Yes.
of that, which
Yeah.
would
That's a valid assumption.
maybe upset some people, but probably be a good thing for our airport as far
I
as
agree.
being a secure location.
One final thought. I know we have a
You want
really...
to start flying?
This is my first lesson.
Okay.
We have a pretty passionate skydiving community. I know maybe their landing area has shrunk, but that's still going to be a viable business.
Yeah, yes.
Right. I haven't tried that either.
I heard your boys have, is that correct?
They loved it.
Okay.
Further comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion. And this is part of a public hearing, so at this time we will take information from the public regarding the airport terminal expansion. Can you come up here to the mic?
Hello, my name is Scott Burgess, Farragut International at the airport. My apologies for not wearing a suit. I didn't have one with me today. We own a Part 145 repair facility there, FAA licensed, and we work on aircraft. We also have a charter, 135. We see nothing but good things that can come if the airport gets scheduled air traffic. You look at Ogden Airport, and I've seen hundreds of airports all over the world, and Ogden Airport should be the jewel, a jewel of Ogden, the city of the people. But it sits there as a huge untapped resource. Now, a lot of people, there's two types of people that would fear this type of growth. I've experienced this in Santa Monica, California, when the airport grows. Number one, people fear noise. Easy to fix, noise abatement programs, and as the airport management world said, the jet traffic that would come in is going to be no more noisy than what it is now in Hill Air Force Base, which is much noisy. There's jets taking off. The sound impact would be much less than what the residents are already experiencing. Number two, the type of people that would object to this really care more about their parking spot next to the Auger Inn than they are about increasing, job creation, economic development, community involvement in the airport. I believe it's a Boy Scout merit badge for aviation as well. Also, so I've seen at the airport in Santa Monica many community involvement activities. They reach out to the community, bring them into the airport, teach kids, especially underprivileged kids, about how airports work and aviation, and would you like to be a mechanic someday, and these types of things. There's all kinds of not only economic opportunity with the airport, but community opportunity if it's used. But as it sits there right now, this big, massive piece of land that takes money from the city each month could not only be a good blessing to the community, but actually put money back into the community. So I would like to make myself and my company available if the council needs any input, research, anything, for free, to help push this forward, because I see only good things that can come of it. And I'd like to make one, sorry to pitch for oil, but we wouldn't come here if it wasn't for oil. We were looking at different FBOs around the region, and he was the biggest cheerleader for Ogden. I've never been to Ogden before, but he said, we are #1 in job creation, #1 in community involvement. We welcome you here, and this is a great community, and Ogden this and Ogden that. So very happy we came, and looking forward to doing much more business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Further public comment regarding the airport? Seems there's no motion or activity that way. We'll have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Van Huzer and a second from Vice Chair Blair to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I wondered, will we have to make any improvements on the runways out there, or what's the condition of that? Or is there any requirements for us for the runways?
No, not to receive the commercial service. Our runway is engineered enough to be able to handle 757s, 737s, everything. That's our #1 runway. That's the ILS runway. It's 100 feet long, and it's a grooved runway, and it's a beautiful piece of asphalt. We are currently under construction of runway 1634, which is a great runway also, and that's more GA-oriented. But our main runway to be able to facilitate heavy jet traffic is runway 321, and it's in great shape. It was redone in 2000, and it's a fabulous runway.
What about the control tower? Will we have to make any improvements there also?
Control tower has already been done. Everything is in place, and we have great infrastructure there for that.
Do we have adequate emergency response equipment out there?
Yeah, we just placed it. We just put in for a grant for a brand new ARF vehicle in Index B, which we will need. And so we're hoping to, well, we've already been approved for that grant, so we're just waiting for that build.
Last hypothetical question. If for some reason we didn't have an operable conning tower, could we still run this operation from the Salt Lake Tower?
Yes, they control them up to the approach where they get a visual, and at the visual they go what's called Unicom. You just call out your position. It happens in almost probably 4,000 airports around the United States that don't have control towers. And there is commercial traffic that flows to those airports also. Okay.
Well, if there's no further discussion, I actually would echo what Scott said. My brother has also flown it to airports around the world, and he talks about what a jewel this is as well. So if there's no further discussion, I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Van Huzer to adopt proposed ordinance 2012-25. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Van Huzer?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Garner?
Aye. This passes. Thank you. Next is reports from the Planning Commission. Mr. Montgomery.
Is the first one the animal? Okay. Mr. Chair and members of the council, the Planning Commission received a petition to amend the Central Business District ordinance, especially regarding the intensive zone in the CBD, to allow grooming facilities. The present ordinance does not allow that to occur. And so the Planning Commission reviewed this petition, and in their analysis as they discussed the petition and the present ordinance, the feeling was that with the desire to have the downtown as 24-hour day activity of living and working, that some of these other uses are needed to encourage that type of activity going on downtown. And pet grooming would be one of those things, as many people have pets. And this would be a service that could be provided to them while they're downtown. And so as they discussed that, they felt there was not a real negative impact because other uses that have pets in the downtown are already allowed, such as the pet store. As they looked at it, there was one concern about having some control so there's not overnight boarding, so that things like either veterinarian or pet grooming, other types of things, it is a daytime use, and so it is quiet at nighttime. And so in their recommendation, this is not in the petition, but in their recommendation, they had placed hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. As they had discussed this, they asked the petitioner if they felt that would be a comfortable time frame, and from my understanding, that was agreed to, that they felt that would be doable. And so the ordinance that's before you tonight is asking to amend the Central Business District zone to allow household pets services to be to take place in the CBDI, and that have a stipulation of operation between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And the Planning Commission voted unanimously to make that recommendation to you.
How do you classify household pets?
The present definition of the zoning ordinance is cats, dogs, birds that can be kept in the house.
Birds?
Those are some of those animals that ordinarily are kept in the house, yeah.
So are they allowed to do high adventure walks downtown?
Adventure walks.
You know, there are other...
Jump from roof to roof, or is that the...
Well, I guess my question is, there are other places that offer walks to these. Is that something that's allowed in this?
We really don't regulate that, so that, I mean, if those are things that they do as part of that service during the daytime, we really don't have any regulations one way or another that way.
Do you think that's anything we need to think about, being in that district?
Well, probably not at this point. I don't, you know, whether someone in an apartment takes their dog for a walk now, or this operation takes the dog for a walk, I don't see the difference between the two. And we don't regulate the apartment owners or those who live downtown and when they can walk a dog or not.
Well, and I think a lot of the doggy adventure services take them up on the trails.
Right.
They're not in an urban environment. I mean, you'd be nuts to
Yeah,
take...
there's cars and everything else going on.
Well, it just wouldn't be fun for the dog, and in the summer you have hot pavement, cement, and I just can't see somebody looking at doing that.
Further questions?
I know the petitioners are here today, too.
I was just going to invite her to come up. So the petitioner is here. If she'd like to come up this time, we'll let her address the council.
Hi, Sue Wilkerson, 2563 Jefferson. You know, when I was looking through the CDBI regulations, I just sort of scratched my head at this one and we couldn't figure out any logical reason why it was prohibited when the ordinance was written in the first place, which always is an interesting one. But I've run across tenants to fill yet another spot on 25th Street in a vacant building, and this is basically why I thought, well, this is a use that's allowed in other parts of Ogden, and there's really not much difference, especially with our big emphasis in trying to get people to live and work in the downtown. They do have pets, and I actually think legitimizing a pet grooming facility actually will help the downtown, because we can have doggy bags and promote responsible dog use. But the potential tenants are here tonight too, and I would like you to hear from them too. It's sort of fun. So thank you very much.
My name is Whitney Antis, 69 North Quincy Avenue.
I'm Shanna Katata, same address.
And we would love to put a grooming facility in downtown Ogden. We've met with several people just standing out in front of the building that we are looking to occupy, and they seem to think it's a great idea. Along with grooming services, we'll be offering a pet daycare for those that work downtown and have pets at home alone. They can drop them off, and we'll babysit them just like a child until they get off work in the evening.
And then we have the all-natural pet bakery, which is something that nobody else in Ogden really offers. Lots of places in Salt Lake do. We've done lots of research. I've done lots of research. There's about 3 or 4 different places in Salt Lake that do it, and it seems to be a very big business, and it's something that, as downtown working people, it would be nice to have a service of here too. So.
Great. Any questions for these guys?
I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
Got a few people that would like to use our services that are here with us tonight as well, supporters.
Okay, glad to have them here. So thanks, guys. Okay. Further comment?
There's no more.
There's public input.
And at this time, I just noticed that we'll receive public input regarding this proposed ordinance. If there's anybody else that would like to come up at this time and introduce yourself and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Blair Warren. I'm prospectively looking at being the manager of their grooming shop. Besides the animal, not boarding, but daycare and the grooming services, it would also allow a great opportunity to give back to the community as well and bring in the animals from shelters or homeless pets that we could allow to be groomed and bathed and more presentable and more adoptable to find them permanent homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Arwen Thornblad. I live on 12th Street in Ogden. I also work in downtown Ogden. I actually work at the Ogden DMV. I'm married, and my husband and I both work full-time, and we have a dog. And for me, it would be just really beneficial if I had somewhere I could drop my dog off in the morning before work, leave him there all day, not worry that he's going to use my couch as a toilet or use the floor as a toilet, and then after work, it's right there. I can go pick him up and take him home. It would actually help me right now a lot. We rely on my neighbor, and that's just, it doesn't work. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further comment? Okay.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to adopt.
I second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed ordinance 2012-28. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Garner?
Aye. This passes. Thank you.
Good luck.
And I'm excited for the bakery part too.
Welcome to Ogden.
Sophie likes pumpkin, peanut butter, and oats.
Next on the agenda is our Lynn community, and good luck you guys, is the Lynn Community Plan Amendment and Rezone of Property at 608 Grand Avenue. Mr. Montgomery.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, this city again received another petition that requested rezoning a piece of property that's highlighted in this yellow area. Presently, a portion of it is zoned R16 in this area, just off of Grand Avenue, and then another portion of property is zoned C3 in this area. It actually has no real access to C3 property. It sits on a kind of below a little hill that occurs right here. And so that C3 zoning really doesn't make a lot of sense because you really can't get to it for any type of commercial activity. The Ogden Housing Authority, who is making the petition, desires to create a senior living facility located here, senior housing, of 38 units. And to do that, they needed to rezone the R16 piece of property, and in so doing, as our policies state, that all the property should be the same zone, so rezoning to R3, all of this property is what the petition entails. Now, the present Lynn Community Plan does not give any zoning options for this area, and so in order to consider zoning, we first of all have to look at a plan amendment, which is the first item you have before you. As the Planning Commission looked at the community plan and discussed the general community policies regarding zoning, because of the factors that the property is divided by zone boundary lines, the area is really a transitional area with the apartment housing located here, commercial activities here, and then single family to this area. It can act as a transitional area and a buffer. They felt that the community policies were such that amending the plan to allow a specific option that it's R3 with a conditional overlay, so they can become the needed buffer transition area rather than just another use that may not create the buffers needed. That's why they asked that the conditional overlay be placed on the plan so those protections can be given to the single-family homes that are to the south. So the first part of your consideration tonight is to amend the Lynn Community Plan so that this area will show in the plan as R3 CO option, and then in the plan some language is added that then stipulates that it would be for senior housing type activities, that would have buffering, it would have single-family design units along the Grand Avenue side, so it can make those transitions. So that's the first recommendation the Planning Commission is giving you, to recommend the Lynn Community Plan be revised with those stipulations. Following that, then the Planning Commission also looked at then the actual request to rezone the property once a plan amendment is made. And again, because of the conditional overlay part of it, as the Planning Commission looked at it, they also looked at creating a conditional overlay development agreement that then puts stipulations and actually tied as exhibits a site plan of what the project would look like, also building elevations, and in the discussion it talks about not only the heights of the building, the roof lines, that two-story buildings be near the commercial area, single-story buildings be next to the Grand Avenue, and in fact, when you get to Grand Avenue, they'd be single-family style buildings rather than larger buildings. So all those options are then stipulated in the development agreement. Also, the conditions that it be for 38 units senior housing, the parking be oriented, go back to the site plan, to the interior of the project, so the units actually provide the buffer from this area. And I need to make a correction. In the work session, I told you there's 10 additional parking. There's actually only 2 additional parking from the 38. I think one reason it may look like it's a large parking is just the drive aisle, but the parking is only located in this area and then in this area for this project. So it really is 1 stall per unit is what's being provided here, and then 2 additional for guests. So I think I'd mentioned 10 for guests, so I had to correct that. But I think the plan as it's proposed is a good transition. Having this parking of this project next to this parking of this project, so you have some good buffering. And then again, the single-family units here next, because there's a single-family home here, so that streetscape will have continuity also. So the Planning Commission, after they reviewed this, they felt that with the plan amendment, it was consistent, that the development agreement language provided the needed controls that the conditional overlay is responsible for, and they also recommend rezoning this property and approving the development agreement that would go along with this.
And there would be a 6-foot privacy fence with large trees along the south wall to protect.
Yeah, those are all stipulated in that too, and they show up on this plan also along that area.
Where's the funding source for this? I know it says Ogden Housing Authority.
Is Tim here? Yep. I'll have Tim answer that question for you.
All right. And can you tell us the age when you say senior housing? What is?
Generally, it's 55 and older.
But we don't have that specifically?
That's more tied to their housing program than it is to specific zoning definition.
Will they manage the units then? What's
yes,
their
this
bill?
will be and in fact, it'd probably be good to have the petitioner come up to talk about.
Why don't we have
those
Tim
things.
come up? Further questions for Mr. Montgomery?
Beautiful design.
Yeah, and I think the other project they did is, it's an asset to the neighborhood.
The Victoria Ridge.
Yeah, I drove by there the other day, and it's one of the nicest buildings in the area.
It is.
And it's well-maintained, and the
this would be the same
landscaping
in
is
this
nice.
location.
We'll have the petitioner come up now.
Tim Price with the Ogden Housing Authority. I appreciate the City Council hearing our petition to hopefully amend the Lynn Community Plan to allow for the R3 option, and then the petition also to rezone the land, of course, if the R3 option's approved. What we're hoping to do is obviously develop some apartment units, 38 units, and they'll serve individuals that are 55 and older. I think some good things come out of this. Currently, the property is vacant land, obviously. It's been a maintenance nightmare for some time with overgrown bushes, weeds, trees, and so we always get unwanted activity back in that area with some complaints. So I think obviously by building something like this in this area, we'd curb some of that activity, hopefully all of it, but also we would bring a new project into the neighborhood that I think would be fantastic and maybe bring some value as well. But most importantly, I think it helps us meet our mission. We serve individuals, families that are low income, so this would provide affordable housing for, as Greg described, as 55 and older. That's similar to what Victoria Ridge is that you described. And so that's what we're hoping to do. As far as funding sources, the way these work, we apply for state tax credits. The state's allocated so many credits, so we apply for those, and if we're awarded those, investors come in and purchase those for so many cents on the dollar, so it raises the equity, and that's a big portion of how the money comes in, and then, of course, just traditional financing. Then we'd ask the city for some money, too. I'm just teasing. But no, that's typically how it is. It's done with tax credits and raising equity that way, and then some financing on top of that, so.
Have you applied for the tax credits then?
Excuse me?
Have you applied for those?
No, the tax credit rounds every October. We're hoping to get through this stage, and then we'll apply for them, and hopefully we're awarded the first round. If not, I'm pretty sure we'll get in the second round. So.
Well, then you'd like to start this probably next spring or next summer?
Yeah, in theory, if we get the tax credits, we would probably start early spring of next year. So.
When you say families, what are you saying? Husband, wife? I mean, when I say family, I think of children.
Right. This property, maybe I misspoke a little bit, is just for individuals 55 and older. So it could be a husband and wife, or individuals. Typically, is what we see, but they have to be 55 and older. Is what it's geared to.
Further questions? Mr. Price, I drove by the area also and looked at it, and the academy across the street and other development that's around there, and I think this would really benefit that area. Thank you. Further discussion?
There is public input as well.
Okay. And we'll receive public input regarding this community plan, rezone, and amendment.
Good evening. I'm Harold Woodruff. I'm the architect helping the Ogden Housing Authority. I'm also the architect on the Victoria Ridge project. I just say one of the reasons I like working for the Ogden Housing Authority, because Tim sets out from the beginning wanting to do a superior product. I can't say that for all of the clients I work for. I think working with your staff, we picked up the concept of what they were trying to achieve in this neighborhood, and I think our project will do that. One thing that might be of interest, since this is a tax credit project, this will, to qualify for the tax credits, meet a much higher standard than your average type house that's being developed. We have to not only meet Energy Star, but we meet Green Communities certification. So this project will be built much more sensitive to the use of our resources, and it will be certified by the Green Building Council. In the long run, what that does is help the tenants there reduce their costs for utilities, also the maintenance on the building and the operations of the building. One thing, a couple things of interest in working with your staff and your ordinances, the vast majority of the exterior of this building will be masonry, a brick-type product. We are enhancing the landscaping. I don't think I've ever had a project that'll have as many trees per square foot as this project will. But anyway, any questions I can answer? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Woodruff. Appreciate it. Further public comments? Motion? Or further discussion?
I move that we look at proposed ordinance 2012-29, amending the city ordinance for the CO, for the R3 to CO for the properties located at 608 Grant Avenue. This is part 1, part 3, I think. Right?
I'll second it. We have a motion from Councilmember Van Huser and a second from Vice Chair Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2012-29. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Van Huser?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks? Aye. Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Garner?
Aye. That passes.
And the same goes with number 4, which is proposed ordinance 2012-30, amending the zoning map of Ogden City.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Van Huser and a second from Councilmember Wicks to adopt proposed ordinance 2012-30, amending the zoning map. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Van Huser?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Garner?
Aye. This passes. Good luck. Thank you. Next is administration reports. Mr. Johnson.
This is going to be handled by Mr. Goodwin, and if there are questions, our fleet manager, Mr. Brookins, is here also.
Chair Garner, council members, thank you for taking time in a long evening to consider this item that I have this evening. As part of the examination of our fleet and vehicle needs in the city over the past few months, one of the things that we did was examine the currently existing vehicle leases that the city has to determine if there was any value of restructuring those leases. Currently, the city has 5 different leases involving some 87 vehicles. We have 2 different leases with Wells Fargo that involve the CNG refuse trucks that the city purchased a few years ago. We have a lease involving a 2010 Pierce fire truck, and we have a lease with Hinckley's involving 19 mid-size vehicles that have service bodies or small dump beds on them. And those 4 leases are what are called municipal leases. Sometimes they're referred to as lease purchase agreements. Under those type of arrangements, at the end of the lease, the city owns the vehicles that are involved in the lease. We have a 5th lease with Hinckley's that involves 57 pickup trucks. That lease is a closed-end lease, which is different from a municipal lease in that at the end of the lease period, the lessor, in this case Hinckley's, retains title to those vehicles. We looked at those 5 leases and determined that there were 2 benefits that the city could realize if we restructured those 5 leases and grouped them together in one master lease. The 2 benefits that we looked at was if we rolled all 5 leases into one master municipal lease and extended the life 3 years on all the leases, we could realize a cash flow savings in the first 2 years of that master lease by reducing the debt service requirements and free up approximately $1.4 million in the first 2 years. That money could then be used to address immediate fleet needs that the city has. The second benefit to the city by combining those leases into one municipal lease would be that the 57 pickup trucks that were under the Hinckley's closed-end lease would then be have the ownership come to the city at the end of the 6-year lease. That's a benefit to the city because at the end of 6 years, it was determined that each of those vehicles would have a residual value of approximately $14,000, which means that at the end of the lease, we would have approximately $800,000 in an asset that would otherwise not be had if we kept them under the closed-end lease that we currently have. So we went out to several leasing organizations to get proposals from them. We received several proposals. The most favorable proposal came from Wells Fargo. Their proposal was that they would take all 5 leases, combine them into one municipal lease with a 6-year maturity period. The interest rate would be 2.62%, and I might mention here that that is slightly different than what we mentioned in our work session 2 weeks ago. At that time, we had a lease or an interest rate at 2.55. Over the 2 weeks, interest rates have crept up very little, but they've crept up 0.07% to 2.62. They would take all the vehicles that are currently in the 5 leases as security. We would pay equal installments of monthly payments over the 6 years, and then at the end of that 6 years, all those vehicles would come back to the city or be retained by the city as our own ownership. So the proposal that we're bringing to you tonight is a resolution that would authorize execution of the documents to allow us to enter into that agreement with Wells Fargo, combine all those leases with a 6-year term and a 2.62 interest rate. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Goodwin?
I just have a note on the Hinckley lease. You mentioned 19 vehicles. In our information, we had 16.
There is one lease with Hinckley's that is a municipal lease that has 19 vehicles involved in it. Those are mid-size vehicles that are service body type vehicles, small dump trucks.
When the lease is up, there is no buyout or anything. Those vehicles do become ours.
Pardon me?
When the lease is up, there is no additional buyout or?
No, all the leases that we currently have a no penalty payoff clause in them, so we don't suffer any kind of late or penalties by terminating those leases.
I think the question, though, was, are they ours or do we have to pay an amount at the end? We don't. Once we've paid for the 6 years, those vehicles are ours.
I might mention that because we are extending the lease out an additional 3 years, there is an additional interest payment that we would realize of $290,000 in additional interest. So the trade-off that you're looking at is we pay additional interest over the life of those leases, but at the end of the lease, we have an $800,000 asset in the 57 vehicles that we have.
What is usually the life of a, I know a lease is a lease, but what, on these trucks, what is the life of a truck like that? 6 years, let's say 6 years out. I mean, is that, I know you say they're worth $14,000, so that's what you're estimated.
Right, we're estimating that we would have a life of about 6 years on those pickup trucks. The pickup trucks, the ones you're specifically talking about?
Any of them. I mean, it just seems like 6 years, and then and how they're used, of course, would indicate what their value would be at the end of 6 years.
Obviously, we have different kinds of vehicles, so some of them have different lives. Richard, do you want to address? We have refuse trucks, a fire truck, pickups, and so.
Yeah, the largest group are the pickup trucks, 57 of them, and we estimate it using NADA, Blue Book specification comes out $14,000 a piece, roughly, for those trucks. They have a 7 to 8 year life, in our operation, and depending on where they're assigned, whether in the parks operation or water. So every piece of that equipment will exceed the life of the lease.
Of the 6-year lease. That's, I think that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like the fire truck is a 20-year vehicle. The refuge trucks, I believe we have them at 8 years in the plans.
And Mr. Goodwin, I think Mr. Stevens was referring just to our notes. With Hinckley's, we have 16 vehicles and related equipment. And I think a couple times you referred to 19.
Yeah.
Referring to the equipment?
Well, in here it says we have 16 vehicles with Hinckley's.
Okay. I think that figure is erroneous. There is 19 vehicles that we
There
have.
are 19.
And the equipment that's referred to is the additional
house,
the service bodies and so forth that were placed on the chassis.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Chair Garner, I move that we approve the lease refinancing.
There is a public input.
Oh, we are. I'm sorry.
Apologize.
Do we have public input on the fleet lease refinancing? Okay. No public input?
I move that we approve the proposed resolution 2012-15 for the fleet lease refinancing.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Van Huser and a second from Vice Chair Blair to adopt proposed resolution 2012-15. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Van Huser?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Garner?
Aye. Thank you. This passes. Next is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. In this form of government, all city personnel are the responsibility of the administration, not of the council. Please discuss any concerns you may have regarding staff with the mayor, chief administrative officer, or department directors. No public comments. Comments from administration.
I'll just again reiterate, I really appreciate the effort and energy you guys all put into this rate study. I know it was extremely exhausting for everyone involved, and I'm very impressed with your commitment. So thank you again for that.
Yeah. Council staff.
I just also want to say thanks to all involved in the utility rate process. Very collaborative, worked well. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members.
You know, I think our staff, our personal staff for the council has really helped us kind of wander through this maze, and I feel like that's what it's been because we've had so many questions that needed to be answered, and the council staff has worked very hard to make sure we did get the right information in a timely manner.
Other comments?
I'd like to just acknowledge all the work that went into the marathon over the weekend. I had a friend who had a wedding on Saturday, and it was impossible to find a decent hotel room in town, which is a good thing, I think. But kudos to all those involved, and it just seems to get bigger and better every year.
It was very successful. Mayor Caldwell was close to first place, I'm sure. Isn't that right?
No.
No.
Well, I think the fact we have 2 councilmen that run it, I don't guess councilwoman and councilmen that ran it is just amazing, so.
And many of their family. I was down, ringing the bell and cheering people on, and it was very exciting, and was yelling for Councilmember Blair right as he finished, and I thought it was great to see such participation, and many course records were broken that day. It was wonderful weather, and great support from our volunteers, and from the city and the Gold Foundation. I just want to commend all of them for all their work, and the medical staff and others that I just saw kick in were wonderful too. They helped everybody. And last, also, I want to thank Skip Reese. She's resigned from the Christmas Village, but just thank her for her dedicated service and hard work that she's put into that.
Mrs. Claus.
Mrs. Claus is right. Mrs. Claus.
Any other comments from council members? Next is consideration of adjourning into a closed executive session. Mr. Williams.
This executive session is permissible for the purposes set forth in the agenda.
And a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Wicks to adjourn into a closed executive session. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner. Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks. Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. Thank you. And following the closed executive session, we'll return for new business for the appointment of a finance manager and adjourn after that. Thank you. We want to welcome you all back from our closed executive session. Next on, for the Ogden City Council, next on the agenda is new business. And we have the discussion of the appointment of our finance manager.
Mr. Reynolds will be representing the administration. So he has perfect hair.
I'm never going to hear the end of that, I'm afraid. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Chair, members of the council, it's my privilege to visit with you this evening and make a recommendation from the administration to appoint Laurie Johnson as Ogden City's finance manager. Regrettably, we will be losing John Arrington, who recently announced his retirement. We'll be losing him the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. I don't know if I've let this body know, but you should know, this is the 28th budget that John Arrington's been involved in. So we will miss his stewardship and his expertise, but we're confident that in Laurie Johnson we have someone who can respond to the current and future needs of Ogden City and function as our finance manager. Thank you.
Thank you. And discussion? Further comments?
I would just like to say that I am impressed with the candidate's long-range planning experience and some of the innovative tools she's come up with to help cities make sure that they're able to meet their long-term needs and hit their financial goals. And I think she has a good mix of experience that would fit well with Ogden City.
Other discussion?
That I would, if there's no further discussion, I would make a motion that we accept the appointment of Laurie Johnson for the Ogden City Finance Manager.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Wicks and a second from Councilmember Van Hoosier to approve the appointment of Laurie Johnson as the Ogden City Finance Manager. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. Laurie, we want to welcome you, and we are very impressed with your resume and hope that you hit the ground running. And it's been, again, we welcome you. And Mr. Arrington, we want to thank you for your years of service and dedication to this great city. We love the accolades that have come your way, and because of you, we do get high marks from audits and other things, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's customary, I think, to allow Ms. Johnson to say a few words, if that's okay.
Sure. And Laurie, we'll invite you to come up now. And we appreciate your husband being here with you tonight.
You've had a long night, and you've already had to listen to me for a few minutes, but what I'd like to let you know is that I am very passionate and excited about the finance workings of a community. And I genuinely love doing this kind of work, and I will do everything I can to help Ogden City progress. And I appreciate so much your confidence of your vote, and I'll just hit the ground running and go to work. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next on the agenda is motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Wicks and a second from Councilmember Stevens to adjourn the Ogden City Council meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. This is a reminder that we have a special redevelopment agency meeting immediately following this meeting. And as soon as the recorder is ready, we'll get ready for that one. So we'll give her a moment.